Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to break down one of the most important documents in history, the Declaration of Independence. Now, this is way more than just some old piece of paper. It's a powerful statement about rights and revolution that completely changed the game. So let's get into it. First, I want you to try and put yourself in the shoes of an American colonist back in the 1770s. Just imagine. You feel like you're being controlled by a government that's thousands of miles away. A government where you have absolutely no say. All these rules are being made for you, but not by you. So you're facing this huge, life-changing choice. Do you just put up with it, under what feels like total tyranny? Or do you stand up and declare something totally new? This was the exact question facing 13 colonies that were right on the edge of rebellion.
So, how did things get so bad that breaking away from the entire British Empire seemed like the only real option? Well, it wasn't something that happened overnight. It was more like a slow burn of frustration that just kept getting hotter and hotter.
This timeline really shows you the key moments where things boiled over. You've got 1773, the Boston Tea Party, and trust me, this wasn't just about tea. It was a massive act of protest. Then, by 1775, that protest turns into an actual battle at Lexington and Concord. The war had started. And a year later, everyone who's anyone meets up in Philadelphia, knowing there's no going back. Now, the Declaration doesn't just say, hey, we want to be free. Nope. It lays out a long, detailed list of complaints against King George III, what it calls a long train of abuses. And as you can see here, these weren't small problems. They were seen as a deliberate plan to set up an absolute tyranny over the colonies. Every single one of these points was a major grievance. So, because of all these problems, delegates from the colonies got together in Philadelphia. And they weren't just there to vent, they were there to figure out a real solution. And it turned out to be a radical, world-changing one. You know what's really amazing is how fast this all happened. On June 7th, the idea is officially put on the table. By July 4th, we're talking less than a month later, the final version is approved. A special committee of 5 people, including big names like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, was tasked with putting these huge ideas down on paper, and man, they did not waste any time. But let's be super clear here. This document was so much more than just a breakup letter with England. It introduced a whole new philosophy of government that would go on to inspire freedom movements all over the world. Okay, so at the very heart of this new philosophy is this idea of unalienable rights. It's a simple concept, but it's incredibly powerful. The idea is that you are born with certain rights, like the right to live, to be free, and no government, no king, nobody has the power to take those away from you, ever. This is it. This is probably the most famous line from the entire Declaration. In a world that was dominated by kings and queens and aristocrats, the idea that all men are created equal, well, that was completely revolutionary. It basically challenged the foundation of how the world had been run for centuries. And then the Declaration builds on that idea to define what government is even for. I mean, why do we have governments in the first place? Well, according to this document, their only job is to protect these basic rights. Their power doesn't come from God, it's a responsibility given to them by the people. And all of this leads to the most radical idea of all, that governments get their power from the consent of the governed. Think about that. Power flows up from the people, not down from a king. And that means if a government isn't protecting your rights, you have the right to change it or even get rid of it. That was the idea that really truly changed the world. Now, saying all these beautiful things is one thing, but actually making them happen, that was an incredibly dangerous business. Putting your name on this document, or even printing it, wasn't just a symbolic act. It was a life-or-death gamble. Let's make no mistake about this. In the eyes of the British government, every single person who signed this or printed it or even supported it publicly was a traitor, and the punishment for treason was death. They were literally putting their lives and everything they owned on the line for this cause, and they knew it. The ink on the document was barely dry before the words started to spread like wildfire. Just 2 days after it was adopted, on July 6th, a newspaper in Philadelphia called the Pennsylvania Evening Post became the very first to print it for everyone to read. You could say the revolution was now being broadcast, 18th century style.
To really get a sense of the personal risk here, let's look beyond the famous founding fathers. Let's talk about a guy named Peter Timothy. He was a printer down in Charleston, South Carolina, and his story really shows you the kind of courage it took for everyday people to get involved. And the price Peter Timothy paid was just unbelievable. He actually rebuilt his printing press just so he could print the Declaration and spread the news. For that one act, he was arrested for treason, thrown on a prison ship, and his family was forced out of their home. He was tragically lost at sea after the war was over. It's just a powerful reminder of the incredible sacrifices people made.
Of course, this message had to get to the soldiers on the front lines. So just 5 days after it was adopted, George Washington had the Declaration read out loud to his troops in New York. And this changed everything for them. They weren't just fighting against unfair taxes anymore. Now they knew they were fighting for the birth of a brand new, independent country. So when you look at it, this document, written almost 250 years ago, is not just a history lesson. It's a living, breathing text that still makes us ask really big questions. What does it really mean for all people to be created equal? And in our crazy modern world, what is the pursuit of happiness? And how do we make sure everyone has a shot at it? The conversation that started back in 1776 is one we're still having today.